So how do we ensure every victory in games in general? So this is where we're going to talk about in League Lounge episode 7. Today we are here with Season X, or we can call them Feathers, preferably Feathers. And today with topic where we talk about factors of a game, this time on the subtopic of players. So how are you doing, Feathers, right now?
I'm doing fantastic. Just having a nice little break night between a little bit of competitive league, being a hard stuck gold top laner, and trying to keep my nose free of solo queue because again, we all feel that queue tilt at times. I know I've been feeling it a lot in season 12, especially with my champion pool as limited as it is. So I'm doing good. I'm hoping to keep doing even better.
You didn't. Are you hoping that and Riot's gonna be making a decision on removing dual Q? So do you think that's actually gonna be pretty much a good thing or a bad thing? To be honest.
Okay, so I'll approach this from two factors. First of all, originally I was kind of the head direction, like essentially the administrator, the face of zero gravity gaming, and one of the biggest challenges in regards to amateur leagues is setting an appropriate amount of solo dual ranked teams in order to accurately and effectively judge that a player deserves to be in a particular rank area. And this is especially true at the start of a year. Some amateur leagues, again, right now, they have policies where you have to have 30 solo duo ranked games in order to be considered eligible for this year. There's some that take aspects from last year. There's some that take some from the last 3 weeks. Um, but in the perspective of the league admin area, it's often very difficult because, playing as both a league player and an admin, there's points where you just simply don't want to play ranked. Like there's some patches or there's some metas where it just becomes it becomes obnoxious and you end up kind of feeling like you've got to quit the game.
Mm.
Um, Especially in amateur leagues, you get a wide variety of teams. Some extremely competitive, wanting to play on a wide variety of champions, and then you have some that are kind of more casual or more friend based. And it can get difficult at times in regards to people. For myself, I prefer the aspect of solo queue, but I also understand the severe frustration. For myself, I have a problem with, I don't actually want to duo with friends. Not that I don't love my friends. Like I've got a great, league community of people around me who I
You
really
basically
care about.
I mean, I know where you're getting at. It's just basically the
Yeah.
sole responsibility of trying to like you don't want to let your friends down in terms of like playing the game, because what if
Yeah.
in the case you end up missing yourself and you end up sucking, then you're basically disappointing your friends in the
Well,
case.
yeah, exactly. Or alternatively, if they mess up in some case, you don't want to get mad at them.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's by no means perfect, but I'd rather get mad at X Amy Hottie X69 or something like that, someone who I have no clue who they are, and that I can at least kind of push some of the blame off
Yeah.
on, rather than being like, yeah, I invited my friend and they just totally ran it down, and now we're both mad at each other and we both lost 15 LP. Yay.
uh, that's the practice we're gonna be talking about because we're gonna be talking about in the subtopic of players. So I made up this quote to because I thought this actually makes sense on every victory of a League of Legends game. So my quote is: if you can agree or disagree with this, to ensure a victory of a League of Legends game, there are three factors that can impact the winning game, no matter what the circumstances are. This one is basically players. So what do you think about being a player diff as a factor of a winning game? Concerning about rank, concerning about what their drafting is, what their knowledge of drafting is, and communication. Communication is very important when you think about it in terms of pro play, and especially in any flex or any kind of like uh team based situations where you can just like communicate each other to talk about what's prioritized first and then what's prioritized like later on or something that's at least expected.
So I'll approach this from a wide variety of things just so we have we can take each chunk as it is. So for me, I'm a top laner who has a couple of carry champions, but also plays a fair bit of tanks. And so season 12 has not been good to me in a wide variety of ways, especially in solo duo queue. because it's very difficult to play team oriented top laners, and that problem also gets compounded by, in this most recent season, the changing of Unleashed Teleport. So being unable to teleport pre 14 minutes to affect the bot lane, well, that's really nice for the bot lane. It it kind of lends itself away from early grouping and getting together with the team. So there was a lot of points for myself where I'd be taking champions for the team, like Ornn, Malphite, kind of, that aspect of trying to fill out a team comp or give us late game scaling, give us an initiate, but I couldn't affect the bot lane pre 14 minutes, or basically again the first kind of couple of dragons. So for myself in early solo queue, there was points where I was feeling like, okay, I actually have to play extremely individualistic. I've got to play on my carries. I've got to because I had abysmal win rates in solo duo on tanks because, well, I could neutralize the lane and be okay, things wouldn't work out in bot lane, and I would be like, okay, well, I can't help that bot lane. I can't be a Malphite. I can't teleport down. I can't kind of bring the thunder or the boom. And my bot lane's behind. I can't change that. And by the time it's 14 or 15 minutes, if I'm playing Ornn, if I'm playing Kale, or anything like that, those games aren't getting to where I'm getting level 13 or level 14 on Ornn, starting to get some items onto people, or alternatively with Kale, getting to that kind of like level 11 or 2 item power spike. Games were feeling decided long before I had the opportunity to deal with that, like to kind of change the game. So I felt like I had a whole lot less agency, and that often also happens in top lane because you a bad counter pick in top lane can pretty much at some points, if you pick the wrong champion and they pick the right champion, it can be borderline unplayable, right?
Yeah.
So
Especially, I mean, you just basically talk about what number two and three is basically all about.
yeah,
But,
yeah,
yeah. Just think about like what you have to think about in game in terms like that. But we're right now. This is mostly focusing about what a player can bring to the team, basically. So I'm just gonna give you these lists right here. So the reason why I'm putting these lists right here is because in your own opinion, which this is a perfect thing for you because you're a gold player, is number one roster. The question is, does roster matter on who you place as a target team? Like say for example, there's a let's say the example. There's a massive gap between a plat 1 player versus an iron 4 player. Yes, there is a huge gap, right? But what if there's a certain aspect of gold 4 player versus a silver 1 player? Like, does that really matter at that point?
I think first of all, mentality has to be kept in notice, especially in amateur competitive leagues. There are going to be games where you are going to make mistakes, and how you react to that in communications is integral. I'd much rather have 5 people who have, you know, a good deal of flexibility or the ability to shake off a bad game rather than, have putting unfair expectations on themselves or on their team, because I've seen way too many teams that are filled with better ranked players who have deep champion pools or anything like that, but the second they face adversity, they fold up like a cheap accordion because
Yeah,
they're not used to it.
yeah, yeah.
And that's an important component. That's what makes those aspects different. I've seen players again that who understand matchups or and know their role rather than trying to force something onto stuff. I'd much rather have people that at the very least, as odd as it sounds, that can at some points take an L. There's a lot of teams that in amateur leagues, they get through the first kind of 2 or 3 weeks and they're 0-2 or they're 0-3, and it's either, they're either blaming the team, they're folding up the team, or they're going, no, I'm too good for this team.
Right.
And so that, for me, it's just an appropriate mentality. It doesn't mean that you're not challenging yourself, it doesn't mean you're not trying for more. But it also means, again, at some points, that, you know, in a team atmosphere,
Yeah.
you're going to be involved with these people beyond simply one game. So you have to understand and accept that at some points things aren't going to go your way, and and that obviously can creep up to the highest levels of professional play.
Okay. So, like I said, so what you said before in terms of mentality and such, if I were to give you a goldful player and silver one player, and they're both calming, they both are like, you know what? Because we can take an L. It doesn't matter what I want to tell. Who would you rather take? A silver one player that same concept, same mentality, and all that too, but their skill line is not that it's not that different. It's very similar. Who would you rather take?
I think it comes down to a wide variety of things. There are players, and this is where I'll take a second to critique myself. Um, Being a hard stuck gold player at some points, I struggle with adopting a wide variety of champions on some of those cases. I tend to be more specialized and kind of force opposing teams to account for me in the draft phase. Whereas there are other people, again, who have a far deeper champion pool at, like, let's say Silver 1 or Silver 2, where you can't really properly ban them out, but it's they may not have necessarily the same impact. So it comes down to, team composition when we're looking at that. If I'm looking at two players between a gold one or a gold 4 and a silver 1, it could also be just simply, the ability to, if they've got the same champions, I think it's borderline a coin flip. If they've got a different, a wide variety of ones, then I'd probably take the one with the deeper champion pool. I can't count the amount of gold top laners or silver top laners that I've faced that in some cases I'll look at what their major champions are, and it will be Garen and Tryndamere or Set and Camille, and they have one particular style. So if there's someone who has multiple styles or can function in multiple roles, that's the player I would want on my team.
Okay, that's actually what we're gonna go for the next one, which is drafting. The question is on that one was, would it be better to put in a player with a wide champion pool that knows the counters but has basic mechanical skills, or a player with a small champion pool but knows their mechanical skills very very much? And I know there's a low possibility to find a player with both skills. Like that is very rare to find a player that can have both skills, unless there's a competitive integrity that's going on. But in order to find those kind of players, like in order to find those kind of like situations, would it be better to put in a player with a wide champion pool that has no that knows the counters but has very less like basic skills anyways, versus a player with a small champion pool but like not like one but like four or such, but knows the mechanical skills very very like very good.
So I'll give you an example in one particular league, and I'll talk about it in the first round robin, which was best of ones, and the second round robin, which was best of ones. Um, I was kind of the face of this team in regards to best of ones, and even though things were not going like well for me in solo queue, in the first round robin, which was we played 8 teams, all best of ones. 6 of the games I was put onto Orn duty. Um, which was fine, but that spoke substantially as to how much like teams did not want me on carry champions. And I've got a smaller champion pool. I accept that. So as such, we were also winning those games because the people who I was playing against didn't have, like they were going, well, if we neutralize the carries, then everything's going to work out up in top lane against. The second round robin, on 1 week, we played 4 games. And in the first round of stuff, 11 out of the 12 bans in, like, so again, the first 3 bans in all 4 of those games, 11 of the 12 of them went towards my champions. And so, and that doesn't happen, obviously, in professional play. You're not going to invest, that much banning in regards to almost any player, especially a top laner among other things. But it comes back to like equivalent exchange. I would go, you know what? Okay, they took me off of a lot of my carry champions. I've got a smaller pool, but if my team can't, can't get it done, basically having their entire champion pools open and not taken away from them, then there are bigger concerns than my champion pool. It's not to say that my champion pool isn't a concern,
Mm-hmm.
but if we're talking again about drafting, you know, there's a trade-off in regards to that. A person who's more specialized is going to draw explicit bans. Uh, in amateur leagues, there's some points where if a caster or streamer doesn't know me, they'll look and go, "Oh, they banned this champion in the first phase." Well, that doesn't seem to make sense to me. Like, again, as an example, one of my champions that I tend to play is Alawi. You're probably It's really odd in the first phase of anything
Mm-hmm.
to remove Alawi. It's not that Alawi isn't a frustrating champion. Believe me, in top lane I understand that. But in the first round of bans, to eliminate Alawi is pretty odd because there are some obvious counters that can exist for that particular champion. And so streamers and casters would be like, well, okay, you know, weird ban, not really a meta ban in the context of stuff. Though that might have changed in the last patch because obviously Alawi got a bit of a buff. But to see that in like 12-1, 12-2, 12-3, that, where Alawi was one of the weakest win rate champions in top lane, it was certainly startling to some of those casters. So the thing about someone with a wider pool is yes, they may understand aspects of those counters or what have you, and they may have those opportunities to pick specific champions, but those bans in the early drafting phase may go to more of those meta things for other players. Like, again, maybe your jungler's getting some of that stuff out. Maybe they're targeting something like making sure that either they're getting Jinx or alternatively, they're banning Jinx. And so that can also curtail a team's ability to create a proper draft plan if an opposing team, rather than investing in comfort bans, is explicitly trying to cut out, major meta picks or forcing you to either to handshake a couple of champions off of some of those things.
Yeah. I mean, but think about this though. I always say my perspective too. The fact that let's say for example, the shy for example, he actually has a good set. Obviously, he's a pro, but so he has obviously has a good set of variety of top laners, right? But
Yeah,
the fact that his skill actually like this is why I said it's very low possibility to find a good player with good or wide champion pool. The shy is one of them. The shy is actually really good at playing at his picks that he thinks it won't matter what he picks into it, and he'll just ends up playing into it and actually wins it. Either win it or lose it doesn't matter, but he plays well into it. And the fact that what I consider about drafting is that drafting is mainly applied to what the person is comfortable with that actually helps in like team fights or actually helps in the team itself. Like I honestly think that let's say for example Kennen is actually a really good top laner on terms of if you actually get him ahead you can actually gank with the 5-man ult or something like that. Any global ult like I would consider is very important. Like misfortune ult, Soraka ult, or let's say Zillion. Actually, no, Zillion will be more of a one-person man, but let's say Diana actually too. Even Seraphine too can you actually hit up 5-man ult, or even Renata too. Those kind of champions or that kind of like idea of a champion, you can pretty much understand the concept of like what you can bring to the team and such. Is what I consider as a good player, but also thinking about how good his pool is, not just rather how wide his pool is. And especially I think about what's so special about a player itself is that this person is probably very good at controlling the lane right there or very like engaging so that if the jungler manages to see, oh, the top laner is actually falling behind a little bit, but still can manage to hit some damage in, then the jungler will gank that top laner or say mid laner, blah blah blah. Then they actually get a kill, burst blood, or another kill. Then they get that person ahead of the game. That's what I like about what the player can bring, despite of the draft, because either way, the drafting what you put in doesn't really, in my opinion, does not really matter is how we're gonna bring this another topic right now to communication to another subtopic on communication. The question is awareness more important than communication, or is communication prioritized first than awareness? Which I'm now gonna say I think that communication is very important, although awareness should be recognized first, because you should not be able to you should not be able to look at your teammates. You just basically trust their coordination. That's what communication is. You just basically say, "Hey, I'm gonna go down bot." Okay, and you just basically looked at your own champion. You gank that one. The bot laners already know what to do. They get a kill. That's what I like about communication for the players, despite of the draft, because how well you guys can synergize and how well you guys can communicate into that. Awareness is what I say is awareness is pinging and looking at the minimap and your teammates, like what Faker does. Faker does the awareness and communication of what he does. He clicks and he pings. He actually pings, say, I'm going to target this champion or target this objective. That's what I consider as awareness. Communication, like I said, is on mic, preparing for team fights and ganks. So, what do you think about that?
Well, I when we're bringing up the aspect of communication and awareness, again, speaking as somebody who when we were discussing stuff last time, we were talking about the top 10 teams, or like the teams coming in to NALCS, and I talked again about C9 Summit. And Summit is obviously, it's someone we highlighted in our last talk, somebody who could come in and warp the top lane meta in LCS. And essentially, I'd argue that they have. Like, every quantifiable stat for Summit is ahead of the rest. And for the most part, when we're talking about, top lane. And I've seen a fair bit of Cloud9 games, sometimes again, where Summit has that ability to make small gains or small benefits that he gains over the opposing top laner bear out substantially or massively over the top of a game. And looking at that, can, you know, obviously Summit versus versus Fudge, or the other people on the team, there can be communication issues at some points in regards to stuff. So there is that general just game awareness on some of those things.
Okay.
With looking at some of the junglers that are somewhat popular in the meta, if we're looking at China, or the LCK, the LPL, there's been a fair bit of Volibear or even Vi. Those abilities of champions who can either come in and turn off top lane turret, make that 3v1 dive to kind of try and get your top laner ahead. There's, obviously there's back in the day the old Renekton Elise special where, okay, you're getting stunned, and then once you're done getting stunned, you're going to get stunned again, and you're dead, and we're diving away, and all of that other stuff. But it's that's the trickiest part off of some of those things. Obviously, solo queue, communication always feels like the absolute worst thing. You always feel like you're basically, at some points it can feel like you're borderline drowning, and you're getting nothing or no responses from people, like nothing in regards to communication, and it's always a very difficult thing in regards to some of those things. I appreciate at some points for myself when I'm playing a more passive lane to kind of at some points try and give additional information off of some of those things. But I would agree with you that awareness and just general acknowledgement of win conditions and driving stuff a little bit more forward. Comfort obviously can play into that. We can look at that later. Because there are games in which teams obviously are going to be more risk adverse. If we're looking at Cloud9, and we can look at that obviously in regards to different team compositions and the different, pre-LS versus post-LS for that. But if we're looking at it in solo queue, at some points, again, it can be the most helpless thing to watch your bot lane get behind while the jungler's up top lane. Like, the opposing jungler's up top lane, and you're just going, okay, well, I can't really... There's nothing I can almost do for awareness or communication if my bot lane is getting bodied, and I can't even teleport down there to help. So, it's tricky. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. The thing is, I always wanted to have an idea like this, and it's not like League Voice or anything like that. But the idea is that as soon as we queue up, everyone gets queue up. It's automatic on mic, so everyone can hear what's going on and all that blah 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 stuff.
Mhm.
That sounds like a good idea, right? Because when you think about it, it unlocks the communication for random players. But I know there's certain privacy issues and all that too. But I feel like that is a good idea. So in terms of communication, on mic, in terms of random queue, would actually be really helpful considering like if the person that you know is gonna be toxic or not. And the best part is if League actually records these kind of like recordings kind of things. So that way, if someone actually is toxic and all that too, then it basically captures what they're saying and what it looks like and all that too. And the fact that like it's like you can mute yourself, unmute yourself and all that too. But the fact that it's like it could basically record on what they're saying and all that too, and saying what their personality looks like to trigger like if they're gonna be a toxic player or whatnot. I think that's a good idea, but I don't know about you.
it the aspect of it again off of it is that if I'm a little bit like a little bit older, and there's always that harkening back to old Xbox Live, or to where again you'd hear a variety of stuff either in the background or being directly said to you that was certainly not appropriate. And obviously there would be some level of policing that would have to be necessarily required on that. I think, again, in a perfect world with competitive people, we've seen Champions Queue where, again, we've had those aspects. I think it's a type of thing that could be rolled out slowly to see, and to kind of like model proper behavior, I think can work. But the other drawback is that you're still going to have those people that, rightly or wrongly, you know if they start having issues, they're just going to go to one of their other 8 accounts and be like, no, like, say a bunch of stuff or just leave. Or again, it's by no means perfect, but you can have somebody who goes, you know what, fine, I'll waste $5, spew some absolutely like racially wrong stuff, and go, okay, well, you know what, fine, ban my account, I'll buy another one for 3 or 4 bucks. And that subsequently, that there'd still be that game ruining behavior, because those people in some cases would not be getting you know punished through the system based off of some of those things. Because again, in the grand scheme of things, I've often found for myself in my solo queue experiences, there's kind of three outcomes for any. If I'm queuing up and I see somebody in my lobby who in the loading screen is level, let's say, 52, and I'm sitting there, well, at level 5, like 300, I'm going, there's three results here. Either number one, they are a smurf and I'm going to try to be quiet and just not feed and hopefully get carried. Number two, this person's been banned and I'm going to be in for a fun time the second they die for the first time. Or number three, again, this is a somewhat newer player potentially who hasn't had a great, who is just getting thrown, at a particular level, and they might struggle substantially because, I'm not sure in regards to what their actual proper rank is. And assessing some of those things is very difficult, obviously, even for some aspects of the league algorithms. I understand that they're fixing, like, that they're trying to fix that with, the potential move to strictly solo queue. If we're looking at the information according to what Riot's told us, that it would get things extremely close to within one division. There's some points on some of my games, obviously, where I'll be like, okay, you know what? I'll queue up, and I'll be the lowest ranked person in the lobby. There's other games where I'll queue up, and I'll be one of the higher people in the lobby, and it just seems like, again, I can't tell that kind of coming into the game off of some of those things, and that can also create a level of difficulty. It's not, if you're sitting there seeing a bunch of people who are presently, let's say, gold 1 or gold 2, And there I am sitting as gold 4 with a sub 50% win rate. I'm sitting there hoping that it's not the, oh, well, we got this guy on our team. Okay, well, we got the weaker player. But it also comes back to the other side of stuff of, if I knew I was, if I look up my my solo or my lobby and I see, okay, well, I've got, let's say, a silver 2, a silver 1, and I'm one of the higher people, well, then I have that perception that maybe I need to be the person, taking a carry style champion, because I might have to have that role on the team based off of the ranks of those that I've been randomly assigned to by Riot in the lobby. So,
All right. I mean that's communication in terms of solo queue,
yeah.
but right now I want to focus more on the terms of team play, which is like if you, let's say for example in your tournament in Zero Gravity Gaming, let's say you're within team, right? We're talking about communication within a team here. So in this
Yeah.
case, would communication awareness be even, like I said, a considerable factor because you already, like we mentioned before about the whole like on mic and all that too, on that point, like how we have everyone on mic and all that too. But would it be better for a person to be aware of their teammates, or a person who just really is good at communicating and all that too, who says basically the shot caller? We have the shot caller versus them one who's very like good at scouting, who's very good like kind of like AKA quote quote the support. So do you think that kind of person will be very good, or do you think the shot caller will be very important?
I think, again, if we're talking about stuff at a gold level, at some points there are going to be gold level decisions made, and that's not necessarily to say that that's a bad thing, but it's better for everybody to trust in a bad decision at some points and just simply go, rather than the one person who maybe is like, oh, I saw something, and they've already acted, and sometimes they do get the kill, sometimes they just simply get blown up, and all of a sudden you're put on the back foot. So I think there's an importance of a shot caller with some feedback. I think that one of the most frustrating things as a league player for some of my things is when I have no clue what is actually kind of going on. Speaking as a top laner, it is beyond frustrating to hear my team saying, "Okay, well, we're going for dragon." I'll say, "Hey, like, do we have a ward? Are we looking for me to teleport? Are we looking for us to fight here? Like, what's our general plan and strategy?" And get and receive relatively nothing.
I don't like
And
that. Yeah, I don't like that.
like it's so tricky for myself, because I'm like, okay, like there, and even just again as an example, understanding some aspects of stuff. There was one game even last night where I teleported somewhat late because someone said, "Well, you could teleport here," and I had interpreted that as, okay, well, like like we probably need to go in here. We probably need to go, and that was just something that was a slight difference on me versus some of my other teams. Some of my other teams is no, come here, like get like teleport here. And so even just understanding some of the terminology or what that player was actually trying to get can be difficult. I burned a teleport, it didn't affect stuff, and I was still content enough to go, okay, you know what, fine, it's better to be safe than sorry, because we're getting this dragon. But for him, it was like, no, okay, if we're in trouble, here's the safety valve of where you could potentially kind of get in. So for me, speaking from the perspective of of top lane stuff, of where there is points of where you can be quite separate from the rest of the team, in some cases, it's that's an area that I need to continue to work on. But understanding effective communication can also help on some of those things, because I can tell you right now, no matter how much awareness I may have on some of those things, and there's some points where I've teleported in, just seeing the presence of 3 people or 4 people, it's also exceptionally difficult when you're left on an island in regards to communication. So obviously, as top laner, you're probably not the shot caller, or you're probably not the primary shot caller on a team. So you're heavily reliant on if it's the jungler, if it's the support, if it's whomever at that particular point for transition to give you the information that they need so you can make a proactive decision
Right.
off of some of those things. So speaking from the perspective of a semi-amateur gold hard stuck gold top laner, that's been an area where I have personally struggled with in competitive stuff. Is I don't mind if there's a blend of voices, but the worst thing of all is no voice. Because
Right.
if there's no, yeah, because again, so if there's no voice, if there's nobody willing to kind of step up and make a decision, then everyone's just kind of floating in the wind, and it just kind of, it creates a borderline solo queue experience where a team that may not be superior to rank wise or even necessarily execution wise gets an upper hand because the players who are around you can't can't properly communicate or are can't say what they're trying what's being trying to be
Yeah.
accomplished in that case.
So funny thing is that I'm a support. I guess I can say I'm a support player. Again, I used to play support. Uh, so there's this one situation where one of my teammates, he's a really good jungler. He's really good. Um, he's playing Jarvan, and we were up against a Baron play, and the threat was that there was this fed Samira, like really fed. Like as bot side, I was very like bad because we ended up getting caught by Samira a lot, and this person was, I think it was Rel, and we ended up getting smoked early game. So in this case, I thought it's like, oh, what can I do as Galio and all that too, and then the way we played together on Jarvan was so good. Because the fact that I knock up and Jarvan was able to knock up on another, it creates a huge amount of CC, including the ult that I have, right? So as I have good awareness and I have good communication, to be honest. And as soon
Mm-hmm.
as as soon as a Jarvan get hit, I quickly said out fast, like I said, I'm onto you, I'm onto you, because I had ult. And he actually heard and he engaged, right? That ult won us the entire game of the Baron play with the ending, and because of that, I felt like when I said that and he actually heard that, that play was made it so good. The fact that I actually communicated that I'm onto you, saying like I actually see where you are, which is awareness and communication, as in like I spot the Jarvan, I see you, I have within your range of ult, and we actually played it really well. So I feel like what you said right now really like connects to the point where I made that example of why a voice needs to be important, why communication is very important, and that even though awareness is still kind of like okay-ish in a way solo queue point, but in terms of team play, you really require a voice to really help other people, because if I recall, even the support like me, even I say something like to help a teammate and such, because let's say for example a jungler just decides to go to the enemy camp, right? If I'm on the ball lane and we're actually like say we push the tower in, right? That their tower's gone, first tower. I would actually say I'll follow, and I'll actually go follow inside the jungle, despite if I end up getting hit or not, because that way that jungler will see, because the time zone the time difference of the jungler going into the camp versus me going into the camp right now will be different, way like much different, right?
Yeah.
So if I end up getting caught in that tri bush, for example, and the jungler saw that, right, and I said, "Oh, I got caught," he knows exactly what happened, and he's gonna get out of there quickly. So that kind of thing, when I say I will follow as a support, really makes a save for the jungler itself. Because if the jungler doesn't, if I don't say anything, the jungler won't expect the tri bush. He's gonna get ganked, and what if a Drake comes up? They're gonna get the Drake, and we end up losing a spot on that. So I feel like that point, as a player itself, a voice really needs to be heard, because I honestly think that this, like I said, in terms of working with a teammate itself, it's better to learn what their style is to know about the synergy, and communicating is very important, at least. So when I usually play with other people, which is duo queue and all that, I personally want to make sure I check what their style is, be like what ADC they pick. Like say for example Ashe, Caitlyn. Oh no, not Ashe, Caitlyn. Ashe, Kai'Sa. Who would be a farming ADC to be honest? Kai'Sa is a farming ADC. Ashe is a farming ADC. Sivir.
Yeah, you can definitely see Sivir.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what this is what I'm basically bringing at the point.
Yeah,
Though that kind of playstyle versus like say an aggressive style, like say Samira, let's say um
Raven.
Jinx,
Yep.
Draven, and Tristana. Those can like they have really they're different playstyles in terms of like what the player wants. I see that. I actually see that as a support player, and I'm like, okay, they're gonna play like that. What can I bring to the? What can I bring to their damage and such? Maybe CC for Draven. Draven can actually crit real hard and actually bring like Veigar. That Veigar's actually pretty OP too, for CC and the damage itself to stack up. Or let's say he wants to stay alive. He's more passive. Let's say a farming champion. I do want to give out like Zillion, just to at least CC someone, at least just keep some person alive. Soraka or Karma, even Karma with the poke.
Yeah.
So I honestly think that with this kind of point, I have to be aware of what champion they play and what they play in game, so that I could actually try to like prioritize who's important, who's actually ahead of the game. Anyways, let's say for example, jungler's ahead, but ADC is actually really good on damage. They have really good items, but the jungler is actually really good on kills. Not that much items though. Like he's trying to maybe build like more tanky like all that too. I feel my prioritize is I'm gonna try to be like, okay, ADC has the most damage, which we really need during a late game. I'm gonna protect the ADC at first, with all costs, even if I die. Then if we actually win in a fight on that, then what comes to circumstances, we actually win the game. Like that kind of thinking, I have to prioritize. I have to think about what's very important in terms of winning a game, so that the other player can get the satisfaction. And in terms of these, I'm gonna bring up the conclusion on this. In terms of these factors, I honestly think that although communication and awareness is very important, drafting is very important, because drafting is what makes the person like very recognize what the synergy is. And if you don't know what their champ style is, you pretty much don't know what they're gonna play in game.
Yeah. And I'll look back just briefly to like awareness and communication. So last night I played in a couple best of ones. My team went 2-1, but the game in which we lost, I went up against a Mordekaiser top, and obviously again Mordekaiser at some points you've got to pay the QSS tax if you're a carry. It's gonna happen for the most part. And where we struggled off of some of those things was, if you get sent to the death realm, our mid laner who was playing Vigar and was doing quite well, he would get ulted. He had Zanya's, because obviously, again, you probably don't want to have QSS on Vigar. It's kind of, somewhat wastes the slot. But when he would get taken to the death realm, we wouldn't hear anything. Like we weren't hearing anything from the mid laner, and the mid laner was operating under the assumption, okay, well I'm going to try to survive, stay around me, like stay around where Mordekaiser's like ulted, and then we'll just pop him after the death realm is over, after his ult's up. We would go, like the remaining 4 people, we would go, okay, well this is our chance potentially to pick off the the AD carry or deal with other aspects of the fight. That level of like miscommunication, or alternatively like just simply not saying stuff, because again it was like the second or third time that the mid laner would get ulted, and he was always operating under that assumption that, okay, let's all just not move, let's stay around where the Mordekaiser's ult is, then we'll deal with him and then hopefully like fight stuff out. Whereas the other 4 people, myself included, were looking more, okay, is there like, if we can't stop the death realm, right now, can we get something? Like, can we move and get a pick? And we would get 2 or 3 kills, but subsequently, because we weren't focusing the Mordekaiser, things would eventually go wrong in our team fight because our positioning would be slightly off. If we were moving away to make a pick or anything like that, that would obviously lead more into what, there wouldn't be any punishment for the Mordekaiser once he left the death realm. So just to cycle back off of some of those things, it is a little bit of, I agree. I believe drafting is incredibly important. And in solo queue, that's something that really scares me, because again, being a top laner, it's it's difficult at some points, if you're drafting, if you get to that last little point on a team and you have to serve again as potentially like primary engage or anything like that. Like,
And in terms of being a top laner, as I heard, you basically have no plan B. You have
yeah.
you have a plan A only that you have to probably like go through of, which relies on your jungler and also too all that blah 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 stuff, right? But I heard from like another top laner is that you basically have no backup plan. Like if because obviously with TP out of the picture with no like unleashed teleport like that, you basically have no like way of producing a team fight or a gank if you have no like minion to TP on too, which makes you a little bit of an island man.
Yeah. And that's kind of again somewhat the tricky thing. As an example, again, it's not hard to execute on Malphite. You press your R and whatever happens happens. But you can't blind pick a Malphite because either they're if the top laner has a wider champion pool, well, if they slam Silas in your face, they're getting the best of Malphite plus the team fight ability somewhat of Silas, right? Like so
Exactly.
and so that becomes part and parcel of the issue. Picking Malphite again can help you really much in a team fight, but if your jungler is, let's say, Sejuani or something again that doesn't have high damage or can deal out lethal damage, it's you know it, it's not necessarily all that great to be like, no, you know what, like, let's go 2v1, let's do a top lane gank, and you top lane gank with Malphite and Sejuani into a Darius or something like that, and it's like, okay, well, we basically just kind of served them up multiple kills potentially on a platter if they're somewhat decent. And so it in solo queue, that's something that I often end up with on a aspect of like of where I struggle is, it is great. Like, don't get me wrong, I have no problem with, let's say Jinx Lulu or Twitch Lulu or, X ADC champion and Karma. Those are all fine. It's not that that's necessarily a bad thing. But there are some points where, if you're trying to properly fill out a team comp, that in top lane you can often find yourself in a very bad situation very quickly. And you know, in like extremely high professional competitive stuff, again, you still see the joy of Gwen is immune or Camille or Nar. Like, you see those champions that have some aspect of damage mitigation with a little bit of initiation off of some of their stuff. Uh, and that's you can see how they take priority in higher leagues. That
Mm-hmm.
being said, again, you know, well, I'm not trying to throw shade on my fellow other gold top laners. There are a lot of champions. Again, as an example, Jace. Jace is an entirely different champion in the
Any
hands
Jace.
of a of a professional player as opposed to a gold Jace. Like, same thing again in the case of Aphelios in bot lane. Like, Aphelios, there's two champions. There's the solo queue Aphelios, and then there's the professional Aphelios, which a lot of competitive teams kind of take in the handshake versus Jinx. Okay, they take Jinx. Okay, well, we'll take something else, and we'll take Aphelios. Um, and that aspect of some of those things, I think obviously the bot lane meta is going to change a little bit, but it was easier in some cases to first pick Jinx because the traditional counter picks that might exist for Jinx, if that was Vigar or Ziggs or other AP laners, would create a deficiency in some of those, like for some of those teams, because they would go, okay, well, we still need DPS. Where are we going to get that potential DPS from? Well, how do we go about generating an appropriate team comp to something, in the case of like Jinx or anything, even like Zeri presently with some of those cases, right? Traditional counter picks that might work in solo queue
Mm.
can leave you with deficiencies in competitive.
And
So
I mean, no, you bring up a good point, especially where you gotta think of a game plan, anyways. But in terms of it being a team, you gotta think of a backup plan, like who you think is gonna counter that counter. Let's say, for example, you're in the red side, regardless, and you gotta figure out a surely like good plan to pick a draft that can actually counter out that strongest player or whatnot,
mhm.
and basically play around that. But on the other hand, you have certain rules that you pretty much can't really like fit into, so you pretty much have to make do of what's good for the team and such. Obviously, this is gold and this is plat, silver, bronze, iron. Doesn't really matter, which makes it a little bit challenging because those kind of players are yet still does not have like the perfect marksman or does not have the perfect coordination, does not have the perfect like mechanical skills and all to like click move, click move, click move, click move kind of thing, or a hit move. None of them in the low elo have that yet. But there are some that will like obtain that kind of skill, and it makes you kind of wonder what kind of factor will it take to like improve from that and set yourself on a higher level than the rest of you gold players, the rest of you silvers. I would say myself is I could be wrong, but I would consider myself the best bottom laner in all silver league, in all silver ranked.
Yep.
I'm
And
I'm not trying to brag. I'm not trying to brag or
no,
anything like
no, no. And I
that.
think there's some important. There is some absolute importance in confidence.
Right.
Um, I'll draw back because I kind of want to just take this on into like a full like NA as a whole. Obviously, again, you know, if we're coming back to Cloud9, LS got canned or removed as a coach. Without getting into like the specifics or anything like that, there was a lot of points where Cloud9 did some really unorthodox drafting in the first kind of couple of games in which LS was actively
Coaching
around.
out, yeah.
Where like Soraka mid, Ivern mid, Enchanter mids as kind of one of their things. And what I was so I wanted to look at the team afterwards. And one of the common things that they had said after was that they felt that they were more like they felt different as a team when they were in a composition they were comfortable in. And that wasn't necessarily, again, you can interpret it perhaps as a shot at LS or like unorthodox team compositions, but I think that also trickles down a bit to gold in the sense that there are some points where unorthodox team compositions can be, you know, I don't want to call them cheese because I feel like that really like that undersells doing things that are outside of the norm. And I think
Yeah.
that there's importance in challenging some of that stuff. Um, but even I've played in some amateur teams where even before LS was like LS was when he was kind of more an amateur coach rather than a C9 coach. I had one of my coaches was really big on some of the aspects of
Oh
LS's
god.
stuff of LS's stuff in regards to champion pools and champion selections. What I found for myself was, there was a lot of points where certain champions, obviously by LS or a particular coach, get prioritized that have a higher priority than other people may lie on them. What I found for myself is that because those other champions were being prioritized by that coach, it actually helped to, rather than expand my pool, shrink it down. Because there was points in which, okay, well, we've got this champion that our coach lays a very, very heavy priority on. But that champion, you know, that champion may come in a lane where, okay, it may that we could have had an engaged support rather than, let's say, Lulu. It's not that Lulu's bad, but if we get to the end of a comp and we're going, okay, we don't have a front line for Jinx, we don't have an initiate and stuff like that, it would get to the point of where, okay, you're on tank initiate duty, no matter what you're facing off against, because otherwise the team composition isn't probably going to function. And so for myself, that became, when I had seen, even though it was just gold, an example of some, having a coach who subscribed to a lot of stuff that LS was behind, I had found for myself that while I was playing picks that I was still somewhat comfortable on, there wasn't as much expression for my stuff because other champions were taking extremely heavy focus in mid lane or in jungle or anything like that. And so creating a team comp in some of those cases actually closed off my champion pool rather than expanding it, which was odd because you would think again, if we're walking back to LCS, if you're sitting there seeing Ivern mid or Soraka mid, you're thinking that that's expanding stuff, right? Like, you usually don't see those champions mid in competitive. But there's drawbacks in regards to actually cooking that team up together of where other players are forced into more cookie cutter roles than you may expect. That's what I'm getting at.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's actually it. You actually made a really good point. And a finishing touch there. Oh my goodness. Um, I mean, yeah, that's actually basically what I consider as a draft difference, because based on how well you actually play that champion versus if you already know that champion once or twice, and the fact that it's like what you realize about what the champion can bring to your style doesn't really fit you, or it does fit you, can actually impact on how it can affect around your team, and basically either close off the champ pool or actually expand it. Wow. Okay.
And that's the thing is that again I have a lot of fun with aspects of the amateur scene. I've had talks with a wide variety of people here and there, and it's interesting because if we want to take up to the next step, it's looking at the NA amateur scene as a whole. Are we simply just fine off of comfort and accepting the status quo, kind of just running our race, which is not something again that we're bad at, but it obviously there is, rightly or wrongly, NA as a scene, we're considered a major region with major in quotation marks. Then again, you've got the sight of LS in the first kind of couple of weeks prior to his firing, where there were some unorthodox things. There were different aspects of challenges of where C9 was putting out stuff that NA for the most part again, and even potentially the scene as a whole wasn't seeing. Even for myself, I wax poetic back to my own champion stuff. Do I like? I find myself to not take as many chances or opportunities in some of those cases. If someone was like, okay, if you have to blind pick a champion right now, absolutely blind top lane, what are you going to pick? Well, if I was sitting there thinking in my head, I might be like, no, okay, just give me Ornn. Because, okay, well, now we've got scaling. Now we've got a little bit of initiate. I could probably neutralize the lane or what have you. But Ornn isn't a champion where you're really taking the initiative on, right? You're not going, okay, give me this. I don't care what the other person's going to take. I'm going to shove X champion, down your throat and all this other stuff. And that's something that I often find, difficult in reconciling for myself. Do we take those those chances and priorities as a region? Do we try things that are different? Because again, even if we're going back to Cloud9 has said since LS was canned, well, we feel more comfortable when we're in a composition that we know. Is that a good thing? It's
Possibly,
hard
yeah.
to say. It's a hard thing. It's a hard to say again, because in general, speaking as a Cloud9 fan, I'm like, okay, you know what? I've seen the potential. I like what I'm seeing. There's a lot of things, and they can stand up toe to toe on in a couple of cases. Yet I would also feel that the second that every NA team is eliminated in Worlds, we'd get the, well, that's just NA again. Never gonna get too far. Can never hold up a candle to the Korean teams or the Chinese teams and all of that. And again, it's difficult to decide whether that's a good or a bad thing. on some of those cases, because I don't think necessarily that the status quo is all that bad of a thing in regards to some aspects of, you know, of the scene. I think that there should be points where, you know, regardless of stuff, people should challenge themselves. If that's competitively, if that's solo queue, if that's, up on in regards to the amateur scene. That that all is fine and fantastic. You can't simply get into a rut, and I struggle with that myself. But it also can cycle back to, to teams. If we had talked again, because we had talked about the NALCS here, we talked about our 10 teams when last I was on here. If we had talked about, the LAC, people would have said, well, okay, Team Vitality, they've got Alfari, they've got Perks, along with others. This looks like a super team. They've got one of the better tops, one of the better mids. They're sitting at like 9-9 right now, like a 500 record in the LAC.
They barely made it to playoffs and
Yeah,
against XL.
yeah, and so I think in general, if we're cycling this back to kind of go back to like your gold 4 versus silver 1 thing, there are some players that elevate others, or the role that they play is integral to the success of a team. So once more, if we're looking at the LCS, Evil Geniuses had Inspired, who was a substantial jungler in the LEC. They had Vulcan, who was arguably one of the better supports. Again, I'm not going to say they're better than Core JJ, but Vulcan was certainly in that second tier of discussion. And Impact. That, in the first thought, you'd go, well, that's a daunting trio of players to build around. When we were talking about FlyQuest, we were going, well, this is a team kind of with potential. Yet, again, I would have said at the start of the year, Evil Genius's record would be more like FlyQuest's record right now. Because FlyQuest, again, is, doing substantially well, while Evil Geniuses is still looking to kind of get their feet under them a little bit.
Have you checked on the LCS results right now? Like so far their standings.
I think so, yeah.
They let me bring it up right now. So you mentioned about like the whole situation of players at hand. Yeah, you're right. And you actually said a really good point of how you said elevating the elevating team, and the person who I thought that actually elevated Cloud9 was Summit. Summit actually thought that I thought that Summit was gonna be the only guy that's gonna like help Cloud9, or even worse, like drops Cloud9.
Yep.
But apparently Berserker, Winsome, and what is it, Summit? Those three actually they actually hugely elevated Cloud9, and they actually brought up to 9-2, tied with Team Liquid at first. FlyQuest is 7-4. Evil Jesus is 5-6, but they're catching up. But 100 Thieves is 4th place and all that too. This whole showcase of LCS teams and all that too really makes a difference to how you bring a certain player to the team, and it actually works. Let's say Perks, for example, too. He's not a. Sorry, hang on. There's nothing on teeth. Let's say, for example, Perks. He's not an NA player. He's an EU player, though. He used to play. He actually had a record of playing certain teams, and went to G2, and he actually played in G2 until he went to the finals at 2019. Then he goes to Cloud9 and elevates Cloud9 in terms of 2021, and manages to get them to MSI and Worlds. And what you said right now is now we're bringing in the Thunder, we're bringing in the Korean imports, along with Team Liquid. We actually have a huge roster of like legends: Core JJ, Buipo, Bjergsen, Han Sama. Like we actually have and including Santorin. That's actually a huge set of players that manages to get a good roster in. But the thing is, they actually lost a couple games in. So it actually makes me that's the way you said it. Would Team Liquid actually elevate their team a little bit better now that they're actually trying to catch up to their roster together? Unlike TSM, they actually had Chinese players, which should be considered the better players than LCK, until they actually got smashed.
Well, and that's the interesting thing, right? like if we're looking at CNI at the start of the year, like Summit was a substantially challenged free agent. Like he was considered one of the more substantial people to be brought in. Berserker certainly was among that discussion as well. People didn't really, like people had heard about Winsome, had said a little bit here or there, but the difference that can kind of come from that is that Summit has, if you focus on Summit, he'll still have enough to be okay. And if you don't focus on Summit, he'll get enough of a lead to be impactful against any other NA top laner for the most part. And so the aggression that can come out of Cloud9 in some of those cases, uh, can put a lot of those teams that are used to, while scaling is king, don't get me wrong, like kind of right now, it doesn't change the fact that Cloud9 was willing to take chances in some of those cases, and it's paid off in what we're seeing. You can see, rightly or wrongly, that if I'm looking right now, I'm going, you know what? I'm kind of like I'm excited for Worlds in regards to like NA's teams because I'm sitting there going, well, Bjergsen has taken like Bjergsen took borderline a year off, and he's going to continue to round into form. And Team Liquid again as a whole is still a very strong team. Cloud9 again at some points kind of places that with a little bit of fusion. Like they're kind of, as odd as it sounds, the most Eastern team in regards to playstyle at some points. They're a little bit more unorthodox, they're a little bit more aggressive. And I'm sure whomever, one of those other NA teams, whoever they may be, is going to come on strong. But there is, like, at the very least, there is that level of excitement.
Yeah.
100 Thieves aren't slouches, but you know, if I'm sitting there looking at that, I contrast that in regards to the LEC, where there's a lot of teams, but I'm not saying NA is greater than EU, but I also see more. I don't want to say more potential, but there's at least more chances of of Western teams being more explosive in NA than EU right now. In my argument, like as odd as it sounds, because I usually tend to lean on EU teams being relatively solid. There's old G2 or Fnatic or anything like that. Having that explosive nature. I don't see that quite the same in the LEC right now. I see solid teams. I see very good teams, but I don't see teams that at the very least are going, you have to deal with us in some capacity, and we are going to potentially bring the entire region up as a whole in the same way that Liquid and Cloud9 are kind of forcing that upon NA right now. So
I mean, yeah, you bring like I said, you bring up a point. I'm gonna finish this right here, but I'm
yeah,
gonna bring up another point. 2018 in the semifinals was Cloud9 versus Fnatic, and then IG versus G2, and I think it was IG versus something else. But even so, that kind of planning, that kind of the player roster ahead, was that it should have been G2 that would have carried up the team because they had a huge roster set up and all that too. Or I think it was Fnatic. It was Fnatic. Fnatic had Caps, Broxa, Voipo, Reckless, and Hylissang, which was a super good team, and they actually carried up to finals until they lost to IG, which was considered up to Korean players, like legit Korean players, with Jackie Love and Baolon. But the reason why I brought this up is because Cloud9, Fnatic, G2, and IG. Like those were it was three Western teams versus one Eastern team, and yet the Eastern team won. Why? Because their playstyle with each other was able to counter attack what seems to be a passive. In back then 2018 league, there was no mythic items, so they were playing a little more passive for Western teams. But IG was the first team to actually play a little more aggressive compound that actually crushed Fnatic down to 0-3. And I thought it was like that actually makes sense considering going back to players, they had the Shy, the most best top laner of all like of all LCK. They had They had Ning. They had Rookie, which is actually considerably like the best Western. But who is actually a rookie at that time too, like the first year, second
Mhm.
year. Jackie Love,
Jackie Love, yeah.
and it was actually kind of a decision between Reckless and Jackie Love, and Jackie Love statistically granted became the most dominant ADC, along with Baodong. Baodong was considered like but like that, but Hillsing was actually more top voted support. But the idea that fit between them is a compound on how aggressive they were. They actually took that to the Western players and defeated them. So I actually thought about it, like they actually mashed together their playstyle on aggressive terms, and they actually won that. So I was like, that makes sense on where a player could actually elevate a team to actually where they could actually win a game, or even not even win a game, but win a tournament. On that point, so yeah, that actually the way you pointed out is actually really good, and that part I'm gonna conclude on that onto that. But that was a good. That was actually a really good point you made out there, Feathers. That was actually a really good point how to say they were elevating in it and such. All right, we're actually a little bit long. That was actually a pretty good long take in that point. Funny topic. We're gonna go bring into the funny topics we actually used to do in every episode, which is a little bit fun topic that we bring out. There was actually one topic that we actually did on to another person, which was the favorite, which was the hottest champion, female champion. But this
Yep.
one is more which league class would best fit you. So you don't know there's like every other role, which is top, jungle, mid, AD carry and support.
Yeah, of course.
But instead of that, it's champion classes, which is controller, which is enchanter and catcher, fighter, juggernaut, diver, mages, burst, battle mage, artillery, marksman, which is a common thing for ADCs, slayer, assassin, skirmisher, tank, vanguard, warden, and the specialist, which is like the weird champ things. So I'm gonna give you what the examples are, and you tell me which class best fits you. You ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
So, in terms of controller, there's two, which is Enchanter and Catcher. The Enchanter's examples being Janus, Raka, Sona, and the Catchers being Blitzcrank, Morgana, and Zyra. A fighter would be a Juggernaut, which is Darius, Mord, and Bear, and a Diver, if you can tell, which is J4, Vi, and Hecarim. A Mage, which is Burst, Annie, Syndra, Vigar, which obviously is the one-shot people. A Battle Mage, someone who actually rushes in to engage, Rumble, Swain, or Vlad, or artillery that actually uses their actually abilities as weapons, Seraph, Ziggs, or Jace. Marksman is a common thing within the ADC role, Aphelios, Caitlyn, Ashton, etc. Slayer is Assassins, Akali, Evelyn, Zed, Skirmisher, Fiora, Jax, Yasuo, Tank, Vanguard, Amumu, Leona, Sejuani, or a Warden, Braum, Shen, Tom Kench, or Specialist, kind of like they don't have a certain role for it, but they do have like a certain skill set. Cho'Gath, Azir, Kale, Kennen, etc. So which league class would best fit you? At least a controller, fighter, mage, marksman, slayer, or tank or specialist.
Are we talking as a person, or are we talking again in
On you,
regards
for
to?
you, which best fit you?
Oh, I. All things considered, as I'm gonna go a little bit, off of the beaten path here. I'm gonna go with Vanguard
Okay,
because, in the grand scheme of things, um, if a Vanguard goes in alone, you it's not going to look pretty in any way, shape, or form
just let you
for
know.
the most part.
Just let you know,
Yeah,
Vanguard. The
yeah,
examples are Mumu, Leona, and Sejuani.
yeah. But you can also draw into stuff like Malphite or Leona, like, or even Ornn fall under that guise of Vanguard. It's like there is that aspect of bringing in stuff. If we're looking again at like Sion or Sejuani or even like Nunu or Rammus, if you're the aspect of it is that inherently they're the ones who are guiding stuff for the team,
Mm-hmm.
and they're focusing on getting people out of position. But if they're out of position, you see that right away. Like it can get nasty. Again, there's games in which you can play the almost the exact same game as Leona, and in one game you're 0-1-18, the other one you're 0-7-3, and you sit there and look and go, well, how many mistakes? Like, did I make any mistakes? Well, you know, at some points as a Vanguard it can be kind of helpless, but focusing it back to myself, uh, I'm nothing without my friends. I'm nothing without the kind of the community around me. It means a great deal
Mm-hmm.
in for myself that when people talk highly about me. And it's not even necessarily about my gameplay. It's about being, a good person off of some of those things. So to cycle it back, it's the fact for myself why I would label myself as a vanguard, in the sense that when I know that my friends or like the community or anything like that is around me, I'm willing to take those chances. I'm willing to, like to push stuff. I'm willing to go that extra mile for those I care about. And that is why I would argue for myself in regards to being a vanguard. I can't be kind of this lone wolf assassin or anything like that. The aspect is that I'm nothing without those around me, but when I have those around me, I'm willing to take chances. I'm willing to go to war for those people. So that's
So,
why.
this is the funny part where I'm gonna say this. So, Feathers, I have one
Hi,
question for you.
go for it.
When are we gonna see Leona top then?
Oh, oh, if only, if only. You
or
know,
or when are we gonna see a Mumu top?
no joke, no joke. One of my biggest like slight pet peeves off of stuff is I need them to rework Maokai. I quite frankly I'm so frustrated in some cases that I can't really do much on Maokai because of the prohibitive mana stuff, the fact that for the most part he's kind of resorted to that sapling bush support style stuff. I that's my current hill off of some of those things.
Okay.
I want Maokai back because I think again, even if it's just something like along the lines of reworking Maokai's ult or getting something that allows this champion to exist up in top lane, because I I have a love on for Maokai. I don't have a love on for Maokai when at the end of the game, no matter how hard I try, I can't get above 5 CS a minute because of a variety of things. I want Maokai back. I'm down with Leona coming back up top, Amumu being up there or anything like that. Heck, I'd even settle for Nautilus top.
Oh
I
God.
just want more I just want more stuff that at the very least doesn't feel like you're actively trolling the team if you're taking a tank top. That's what I would like. But
Okay.
that's my thing. So I'm down for a Mumu. I'm down for Maokai. I'm down for Leona. Give me a Nautilus top, but you know,
Well, which style is gonna be for Nautilus? AP or AD?
there's something about a Nautilus nuke that can just absolutely like there's some points when you start seeing that Nautilus ult going towards you and realizing it's going to do a ton of damage, and you're like,
Oh, AP
okay,
then.
yeah, exactly, AP, this is my life now, and you're just like, it, and the worst part about it is again, as a support person, you obviously know when Nautilus clicks and that button's coming, there's nothing you can do. You're just resigned to your fate if you're getting Nautilus ulted for the most part. You're
Well,
like, okay, here it comes. It's just gonna run me over. Anything like that, like, can't really stop it. I'm getting ulted. This is my life now.
unless you got
So
Morgana spell shield though.
it's true. That's true. Morgana spell shield, but yeah, like that's the 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 what I appreciate about Nautilus is that if there isn't proper things done to deal with Nautilus, Nautilus's ult creates a sense of helplessness in the person that it targets. I appreciate
Oh
that.
no, I got marked as a freaking a Nautilus. Oh, guess I have to die now.
Yeah,
But to be
this
honest,
is my life. Yeah.
to be honest, here's the funny part too. I don't even use the Nautilus ult at all until like, cause here's the thing. As soon as the team fight starts, I don't even use it at all. I just queue in someone first, and then right as soon as I get close to that person, then everyone knows exactly what's up. It's like, oh shoot, he's gonna ult on the ADC or whatnot, because there's always an ADC right there, but I don't. And they're gonna be like, wait, what the frick? And they're gonna end up, oh shoot, we forgot, we didn't end up using our ults or anything like that to save like the ADC or whatnot, and they actually wasted like some of their abilities and waste mana. That's when I'd be like, okay, now everyone's gonna go in and just gonna attack everyone. We end up destroying them because at the end, where someone's running away, then I use the ult then they actually end up getting knocked up and all that too. I actually
Oh, that's vicious.
I even get a I almost apparently it was a close call with a burn. Actually, it was an AP burn from Leandries, but I almost give someone a penta. I almost.
Oh.
It's just someone from the AP burn actually burned that last champion.
Mhm.
But I kept the ultimate to the last in case someone decides to run away. Then we can actually chase them down and actually win us. Actually won us the game because I actually kept it to a minimum. If we actually used it, everyone's gonna be split. Everyone's gonna split out from that one person. Cause it's I would rather waste it on I would rather waste it on one person in no environment where if everyone else is dead and that's that one person, then I'll use it to ensure a victory. If it's just using own ultimate early on one person, everyone will see that they'll split out and we can't really use like global ults at all.
Yep.
So that's my plan. I was like, okay, we can use that. In terms of that, I don't know about me. I don't know about you, but for me, I go for marksman because I'm actually pretty good at marking people. Like as I mentioned, I'm pretty good at marking people, and
Hmm.
ADC is where I'm best at, which is Aphelios, Caitlyn, Ashe, Jhin, etc. And I don't know why. I'm just really good. I'm just really good at marking people, especially as when I play Morgana Lux. I'm just really good at knowing where that person is and predict where they're gonna move up or move down. Some cases I do miss. Some cases I do like not try to shoot at all. But in terms of like range and all that too, how far I shoot the ult, Lux ult, and how close I need to get to do the Morgana ult. Like I'm really good at doing those. Like I'm really good at marksman to know like how far it has to be to ensure like oh and all that too. Even Vega ult, I'll flash in and Vega ult and within that perfect range and still get it. So I guess I guess I would be a good ADC in that point. I do play support now because I think ADC role is too easy. But after hearing what you have, maybe it's possible we could actually duo.
See, we'll see. Anyways, thanks a ton for having me in. This was a fantastic little discussion. We went off on a lot of lovely topics.
I mean, there's gonna be a lot more going on, anyways. But this is actually a two-parter where the Factors game is now gonna be applied to updates, which I will talk about in next league episode, with another person. But to conclude this, sees Feathers, do you have anything to say before we end the show?
Not particularly. Just again appreciate coming on. Appreciate having again a discussion because obviously it's always fun to look at, you know, the league scene. Rightly or wrongly, what people may think about, about Riot or even like the, cycling of metas or champions that are always seen to be meta. There's always something to discuss in regards to the game,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that we're still discussing a game, with a wide variety of champions that are at least viable out of like 100 plus champions that have some level of viability in current League of Legends does speak to some benefits. That being said, there are still give us more bans. I want more champions out of out of this because at every single time that I'm in a solo queue game, no matter what happens, I look at the opposing team and I went, I should have banned that, or I should have banned that, or I wish we would
No,
have banned
nope, no,
that.
not. I don't like more bans because the more bans
No.
meaning you can focus on, removing every single champion from that one person.
Oh, I agree from a competitive standpoint, but my goodness, every single solo queue game, I'm like, I wish I'd banned this. I wish I'd banned that, or I wish my
I mean,
my
that's the whole
team had
point.
done
That's the whole
this.
point of
Yeah,
solo queue. The whole point of
I
solo queue
know.
is to improve your status of your own champion,
Oh, I
not.
agree.
And I feel like people say, oh, they countered that person or they countered this person. I feel like that's a lot of BS. Like, if you're
Yeah.
not, it's like if you don't think that's a good counter, you're probably not good at that champion anyways. You probably just pick something else to counter that champion anyways.
Well, and again, just to cycle back, not to go too far, but even Core JJ, like Core JJ being a substantially like internationally known support, at some points will play bad matchups, but knows how to make a bad matchup to turn it on its side, to generate an advantage in some of those cases, and that's an incredibly effective weapon that has served him immensely well over the course of his league career as
Hmm.
a support, right?
Okay.
So that's something again off of some of those things. You're not going to grow in situations where you're not challenging yourself. So I totally agree on that case. Like in regards to some of those things, you have to challenge yourself in order to grow as a person, as a player. That's just a fact. So
Yep.
yeah.
All right. We're gonna conclude this episode right here. Any updates on Zero Gravity Gaming right now in terms of like, are they in playoffs? Are they still in the season right now?
I believe we're into week 3. So yeah, we're just kind of moving along as best as we can. We're running 3 leagues, so that's been going somewhat well. You've always got the occasional hiccups, but that being said, things are going good as they're going through a wide variety of the amateur scene, and it's I. There's a lot of good things going on in the scene right now, both in zero gravity gaming and in the entire scene. And I'm looking forward to seeing what creative minds can do with that in coming weeks and coming months. So
And fun fact is that in case obviously you know this, but no other people don't notice that we are about to set up the first event that's gonna happen here in ASC League, which is the ASC's mid-season invitationals. So the idea of the mid-season invitationals in pro play is to basically show in the mid-season who's the best team overall, and that's what I want to bring here into this league where I know other people are actually bringing up the Worlds idea and all that too, but I don't think Worlds in a mid-season makes sense, and I don't think it's gonna work. The fact that a mid-season, it should be more particular on the fact that it's like, how good is your team so far in this year, in the middle of the year, and that way at the end of the year, Worlds come up, that will actually make a great point of where you can actually create a little more challenging format to where other players can actually try to put in the work, put in the hours, then take what's ours. Yep. And at the same time, just basically prove who's the best amateur team overall. And that's what we're here. That's what AC League here is to bring the MSI to the amateur league. And in case you guys don't know what the date is gonna be, it's gonna be in May to June, but we're thinking about extending it to June and July, because if other people are gonna be a little bit missing on that point on the May part, then we thought about it's like, you know what, we're gonna bring it up to June. So I think I'm still making a decision with the moderators and all that too. I'm bringing it up to you right now, and I'm gonna bring this to other people with like proof. Organization organizers like proof. There's other guy named Chris Sunga and all that too, and other players too. But I'm gonna bring it up that we may be moving the event to June and July, and then it's still gonna be November, December at the end. So just let you know, season next, you can be the first. You're the first to hear. So your whole season ends at when? Which month?
um, late-ish April, like April-ish May. So again, mid-May. So there's plenty of time. So
So that's
yeah, we'll
perfect.
see.
Actually, maybe we'll actually
Yeah,
move it to June and July, to be honest, because that's like just June. June is a 6 month, right?
yeah.
Oh, that's perfect. Then we'll just move it to the 6 month. Maybe we'll probably extend it anyways and all that too. So yeah, that'd be perfect timing anyways for those people who are just about to finish. And like I said, you're the first to know about you're the first to know about our extension moving up to June. And obviously, I don't know about your teams. I don't know about your teams. The whole league doesn't know about your teams in general. But which 3 teams or 2 teams in the IBS or Gold Plat? Let's say Gold Plat actually, because the MSI and Gold Plat is where we're gonna be focused only. IBS is allowed in Worlds only, but in MSI only Gold Plat. Which 2 teams, if you have 2 teams, are actually is actually the favorites right now?
Well, again, it's going to be tricky because in the grand scheme of things, if we're looking at IBS, there's always a good team in regards to monkeys in training. They've always been a relatively strong team.
Okay.
We've got other groups like Goon Squad Gaming has done pretty effective with their stuff. But or Big Duck Entourage, they're also another pretty good team for IBS. That's those are a few there. Few there. Um, Conduit Gaming's really good and Imperial Gaming especially for gold. So there's a few teams there that obviously have potential. The one thing about gold leagues is that early season stuff again very rarely translates to late season stuff. There's a ton of I even just again looking at stuff now. this patch 12.5, the second part of this patch hits a lot of those 80 carries that have been extremely present all throughout the meta.
Okay.
So like like Jinx as one of the one of the particular major ones. Teams that adapt to that over the course, rather than just simply falling back on that, are going to be like again, Aphelios, Jinx, Zeri, yet are going to get nerfed here in the next patch. Whatever that is, unsure yet. But with buffs to like Varus, Ashe, Lucian, Draven, we could see an entirely different bot lane meta emerge. And Riot usually tends to do that in kind of cycles, like every kind of 2 or 3 months they rotate the 80 carries around. And when when those rotations come up and who gets the best read on the bot lane meta, often it can surprise you in playoffs.
All
So
right.
we'll see how that all comes out, how that all shakes out.
All right. Let's get again. Thank you, Season X, for joining this
Yeah.
episode. This has been League Lounge episode 7. Let's give out your shout outs to any social medias that you want to post out, especially Twitch, where I'm gonna post it. Post it. I'm gonna type it all right here on the Twitch chat. But type it in. Shout out what your social medias are and such.
So again, if we're looking at stuff, if we're looking at our particular streams, we are looking at again Zero Gravity Gaming. The O in zero being an actual letter number zero. So that's Zero Gravity Gaming, Twitch.tv. If we're looking at aspects of, our Twitter is kind of continuing to emerge off of that, but obviously falls under the same. In short, Zero Gravity Gaming, the O and zero being a zero. That's where we are, and we'd be more than happy to have you. So
All right, I just post these two websites right here, and that's it for today, everyone. That is the League Lounge episode 7, factors of a game that leads to a victory, and we are here with Season X Feathers, or we call it, and we'll see you next time, or even so. Thank you so much.
peace and love.